My wife and I were thinking several years. Competitiveness of the United States, plus a better place and all over the world to live, of course. So we made this commitment, and we put together a pledge that we were going to do these things. And the reason we did it now, I think, was we could wait until we passed away and then leave a legacy for the University of Louisville. But how much more fun would it be to actually be part of this building process for the Center for Renewable Energy, and actually be part of it, make it happen, shepherd it, involve other people, involve companies, involve governmental agencies, and do all the sort of things I was doing anyway as a consultant. So we're very pleased with the progress so far. We've got lots of things to do, and we, of course, hope to live long enough to see them all come to fruition. We would like to see large companies be involved, make multi-year commitments to the center. We would like to see more governmental help, of course, as you might expect, so we can, leapfrog technology that's happening in the world right now. We would like to have an incubator for small companies to start up, give them some help, some free rent, some business expertise out of the School of Business to give us a little bit of help, plus obviously the technical expertise at the Conn Center. And really make it quite a coalition, a partnership, to make this thing actually happen. We know all about the Silicon Valley and what happened with the internet businesses and what have you. We don't understand why we can't do the same thing from a renewable energy standpoint, university-driven technology and research at the University of Louisville.
Oh, that one. I messed it up. I messed it up.
So that in case I don't want to delay them.
All right.
Because we are on a very tight schedule.
All right. All right.
So I have it on the desktop.
My wife and I were thinking several years.
Good morning. How are you? Yeah, thanks, man. Glad you could be here. Yeah. You guys coming tonight? Good. Good. Okay. Yeah. Whatever you like. Cool. Yeah, I mean, it's just an opportunity to pay respect. It's a brief program starting at 6 o'clock. I'll be speaking President Schatzel and then Conn. And then mostly it's staying around drinking, talking to people, eating delicious food. Yeah, just hanging out in the Angels Envy Club.
thinking several years, but
Hello, hello. Everyone, let's take seats down and we're going to get started very shortly. Take your all your seats and then we're going to get started. Okay, first of all, I want to thank everyone making your time to come to this little workshop. This has been a long time coming. We were actually planning on holding this small workshop in front of Hank Conn, and unfortunately we couldn't do it, but we decided to go ahead with the plan as planned. And so I'm very happy that you all could make it. And so with this, I don't have anything else to say except to introduce the representative of Hank Conn, his son, Phil Conn.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. Good morning. For you that don't know, thank you, Andrew. I'm Phil Conn, Hank Conn's son, and Andrew can tell you that this is early for me, so all you normal people that get up early, I'm up like crack at noon, so bear with me a little bit. So. But boy, it's been quite the journey for the Conn Center. I remember my dad came home from a golf tournament. That's all it was. It was the Ryder Cup back in closer to the mic, and somebody said, well, it seems too loud to me. Okay. Just a trip to Louisville to the Ryder Cup, and he comes home and tells me his big idea, and with Mickey Wilhelm and President Ramsey, and I believe it was a guy named Rocky Atkins, said they were going to start this energy research center, and told me about the vision that he had for the center, and knowing my dad the way I knew him, I knew that his vision was always steps ahead of everybody else's. I mean, he did it to me my entire life. I never beat the man in chess my entire life. I never beat the man in chess. He was always 4 or 5 steps ahead of me, and that's how he was his entire life. Even the books that he wrote and that I read, like Workplace 2000, that he wrote in 89, and you read it today and it goes, wow, everything he predicted was correct. So I don't know how he did it. I don't have that ability. But he told me this gift that he was given to the university, my mom and him, and my mom would love to be here, and she's here with all of us in spirit. And when he told me that, I was like, wow, that's a heck of a gift. And he told me the state of Kentucky came up with this idea, and it was going to be spread across all the universities of the state. And he told me, he said what he thought that meant was mostly UK. And he said, not on my watch. It's going to be at the University of Louisville where it should be. And I thought that was cool. And I was still kind of, worried because my idea was a boat at Lake Lanier. And now I can't buy that boat, I thought, so. And I had a name for it picked out too. It was gonna be Sweet Caroline. And he liked the name because I thought as you drive past other boats, you would go Sweet Caroline, and the other boats have their air horns and they go burr, burr, burr. I thought that was gonna be fun. So, but getting back to why we're all here, it was just to me, I thought, wow, that's a heck of an idea. To be able to really pull this off. And thankfully for all you guys, all you great researchers and theme leaders and students and everything else, you guys have been amazingly successful. And that's what he really admired the most. And he was an engineer by trade. And he thought, you can take all that knowledge and apply it and really make a difference in society and make a difference in all our lives. And that was really the big idea. And in doing so, and bringing it here to the university with their gift and everything else, I really took the risk from the university. And it wasn't just that. He gave up a lot of his time, and he really, really enjoyed it. He loved every minute of it. And of course, I'll miss the man, but he loved all of you. He loved the university, and he really knew that you guys could really make a difference with your knowledge and your ideas into something that you could translate to the marketplace and really make a difference in everybody's lives. And he knew you could do it. He knew everybody could do it, because even as a kid, he always hated the word can't. And every once in a while I would say can't. And I wish I had, because I knew I was getting at least an hour or two lecture on why I shouldn't say that word, because I'd rather take the beating, because the lecture was just really, really long. And but he hated that, because he always said that it's not that you can't do it, you just haven't figured it out yet. At some points, you'll figure it out. And he knew that we would figure out all the challenges that we had for alternative energy going forward. And it's something I couldn't see, and now I can see it now. And he was really excited about the next 10 years. He was really excited. And he knew it was a risk. But you gotta take risks. That's a challenge for everybody. And sometimes risks are scary, but you don't get anywhere without taking a risk. You really don't. And that's what he admired the most, that you guys have the same vision, that you've got to take some risk to really accomplish things. So he talked at length on the last trip here about how much he was really looking forward to what was going to happen. And he knew in the next 10 years that the center was really going to blow up. And I can't wait, because I know what's going to happen. I know all you guys, you researchers, you scientists, you students, I know you guys are going to change the world, and I'm looking forward to it. I commend you for that. And, I just want to wrap it up, get things rolling. So before I introduce our 19th President of the United States, I do want to say just a few words about her. She knows I ramble, so. But my dad, luckily, got the chance to meet her, and really, really admired her. And on the way home, because he always made me drive, so he could talk to me the entire time. And he was really optimistic for the first time in a while. He was really optimistic about where the university was going, where the center was going. And that's what hurt me the most, was because he was really looking forward to it. And in just a short time that they got to spend together, it's like they knew each other for decades, and it was cool to watch. And I feel the same way. I feel like I've known her for a long time, and I'm excited about it too. I can't wait for the future. So please let me introduce someone I'd like to call my friend, the 19th President of the University of Louisville, Ms. Kim Schatzel.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, you can do way better than that. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. That's much, much, much better. So as Phil was describing, I met Hank in the spring, and I hadn't been here very long. And we came in, and it was supposed to be, I think, an hour meeting, and it was more like a 3-hour meeting when we were done. Hank and I shared a lot of similar experiences. For those of you that don't know, my first job out of college was a second shift trim foreman making Pintos for Ford Motor Company. And I was a foreman because they didn't have gender neutral titles back then. Now they're called production supervisors. So I spent 20 years in manufacturing. I worked for Ford, I worked for a company called Borg-Warner. And at the age of 31, I got some venture capital, and I purchased a company from Chrysler Corporation, which was a powdered metal component company. And we were the largest powdered metal component. I added 2 other companies. We were the largest powdered metal component company in the United States and second largest in the world. And I had facilities on 4 continents and served as the CEO for about 5 years. There's about 30 pounds of powdered metal in a car. And it's a competitor to castings and forging. So I was a shop rat. I made flat things flatter, round things rounder, and dealt with, heat treatment and furnaces and things like that. So I can tell you the fact that Hank and I we just started talking about plants, is basically what it was. We just started talking about factories and, and I was a manufacturing engineer, I was a process engineer, and we just started talking about, running plants in an efficient way, in a safe way, and how quality, we both compared the changes in quality during the 80s, quality is free, all the different movements, Six Sigma, lean manufacturing. I mean, every time we came up with another subject, we had 15, 20 more minutes to talk about it. So we really had just such a shared experience with each other. And as Phil said, I felt like I knew him forever. And just had a great time. It's not often, too, since I've been an academic for 20 years, that you get to sit down with somebody who's actually worked in a plant for 20 years. So it was really felt good to talk about shops and what that was like to be able to do it. We talk about the fact that Hank was an engineer, he was an executive, he was a consultant, he was a philanthropic person. But the thing that I would describe Hank as most is he was a leader. I mean, he was a thought leader and a person leader. And without a doubt, when you read his book, when you listen to what he says, the changes that he's made, the organizations that he's led, the people that he's inspired, the people that he's talked to, and the people that he's motivated to be able to do things. I mean, there's not many times that you actually get to meet someone who really led their entire life, and that's what Hank was. He was a leader back with change was being made in American manufacturing and in large corporations, as well as from their processes, as well as their people, as well as their philosophies. So it was truly as I told Phil, it was a gift to me to be able to spend 2-3 hours with him, to be able to talk, and it's one of the regrets of my life that I don't have more time to be able to do that, because he and I, as Phil said, we really hit it off. It was a circumstance where we felt like we knew each other for years, and we had just met. I mean, think about it. In fact, in 2009, he thought to be able to think of the Conn Center for Renewable Energy. This is in 2009, okay? This is almost 15 years ago, where climate change and looking for other sources of energy was just at the beginning phases of that. To be able to make an investment and make a pace-setting gift and an inspirational gift was just remarkable. And then to follow it up, and I had the opportunity to attend the event for your sister, named in honor of your late sister in terms of the Conn Prize for Renewable Energy, and to be able to foster future science and future research to be able to advance this field even more. I mean, that's really, truly a leader to be able to do that. So, I can't thank your family, Phil, enough, and thank the gift that your father has given to this university with his presence, and with his leadership, with his drive, and the ambitions that he gave us. And I can assure you that we're deeply committed, and I'm personally committed to realizing that, because he was an incredible man. So thank you, everyone.
Okay, so we have a very short time to cover many talks here. So I'm going to get started talking about the first company talk. So this is a company that I started in 2011. It actually started operations, and being as part of the conflict of interest policy, obviously now I'm already telling, I do have a conflict, right? I mean, I'm a university employee and I own a company, which is, you're going to see this as a recurring theme right now in this relevance and impact session. So I'm going to introduce a company that we started in 2011, and then how we progressed it and what it takes to actually go into the market and how this can be successful. So that's all I'm going to say. So right now the company is focused on advanced desulfurization as a more mature technology that they developed over a period of 10 years and putting it into marketplace. And then it is actually developing mini plant solutions for gas to liquids, where you can have green methanol and green ammonia. So just a brief summary of the company. Basically, it's located very close to this place here, Floyd and Lee, and occupies about 20,000 square foot place, has a 5,000 square foot for R&D, about like 15,000 for a pilot scale production plant. Then we raised money in 2017, $1.65 million in equity from friends and family around, and also raised a debt of $700K. Over a period of 10, 11 years or so, we basically were awarded several SBR phase 1, phase 2, phase 2A type of grants to develop the technologies. About almost close to $7.5 million from federal SBIR, including $1 million from state matching grants. And then currently this year we're raising about $500K in a safe note investment. It's like a bridge gap before the technology becomes commercial and your valuation could go up. So you actually can take a safe note type. Safe note is a very interesting mechanism by which if you want to raise money. So what we are doing with that safe note is we're going to do a pilot trials, 30 barrels per day type of demonstration in refineries. And that is required if you want to actually implement the technologies. So if you want to actually go into a refinery industry and implement anything, the minimum is about 100 tons in a packed bed tower. All the towers that you see, 100 tons of your product should be implemented. That's the minimum barrier. And so they're not going to put 100 tons in it if you just demonstrate it using a 200-gram catalyst reactor. So I'm going to explain what we are doing, innovation, where we are going, where are we, and how this can be successful. So the facility is right here. You're more than welcome to come and see it, and we can arrange a tour of the production as well as a thing. And I just want to give you one more highlight. In the last 10 years, 11 years or so, we had about 50 PhD years of research development beyond what we did in the university. When we developed the technology, we just did a small process schemes for making small nanowire materials in the lab, maybe making like milligram scale, right, in 2009. Then we licensed that little basic patent in 2009, and 2011 when we started working on it. And it took us like 50 PhD years to get where we are right now, and that's why it is called deep tech. And typically it takes 20 years from the discovery to implementation, and hopefully we will get more faster as we go along. And so people do need to understand that it takes time beyond the university research to actually make a commercializable product, or actually ready for commercialization. So this is a simple slide. We started with the nanowire innovations, and the basic innovation is how do you make it, what nanowires can you make it, what kind of methods you can make it with, right? So I'm going to present one little system called mixed metal oxide nanowires. It's a single crystal rods with a high aspect ratio, diameters being less than 50 nanometers. Why are they interesting? They're interesting for a variety of applications. They're interesting for batteries, they're interesting for sorbents, they're interesting for catalysts. So there are three main application areas that this mixed metal oxide nanowires we're developing technologies on. The first one is ADE sulfur, which is more commercially ready. It's about over a period of 7 years of continued funding from the DOE and demonstration. That is what is going into the marketplace right now. We're already in the production. Last year we supplied about 13 tons of the product to a very large US manufacturer. Now they're looking at pilot trials. About like 15 refineries are looking at our product, but if you want to implement it, you have to go through what I call pilot trials in refinery. So that's what we're going to do with AD sulfur. The second one is we develop this catalyst. Along with it, because we know the production methods, based on that we have a process knowledge, we combine the process and that particular catalyst, which is very, very unique catalyst, not publicized, not published, and it's only in the patents. And that is a reforming catalyst. It can actually produce, it can reform anything to produce hydrogen without any coking. It's been done several trials of more than 500 hours. And combining with the plasma schemes, we came up with this process called PlasCat, we call it short, plasma catalysis to produce green methanol and green ammonia. Ammonia from air and water, and methanol from CO2 and hydrogen. And the third one is the same thing, is called, the same nanowires can be used for absorbing CO2 from air or from any stream. And basically they are chemisorb them. And because of the nanowire sizes, these solid sorbents are regenerable. That means that they can go from sorbing and desorption. And so we came up with the process CO2 capture from air as well. So the first application, why removing sulfur? Sulfur is another element in your periodic table. It goes in our life cycle quite a bit. It goes into many processes, food processing, everything, and it comes from all the hydrocarbons that you take it out of the earth. And now we use it 20 million gallons per day, the processing these fuels. The sulfur eventually emits into air. What happens when you have a SOx emissions? You get asthma, all the health effects that you see in the urban communities coming from SOx. The entire IRA bill is based on removing that health effects, $400 billion per year health effects, and that's how they actually passed the in IRA bill, Inflation Reduction Act, for example. So if you want to, electrification is driven by the need to remove the emissions from your vehicles. Okay. In addition to that, it also improves the performance if you remove the sulfur from the fuels. And sulfur is inherently present in all hydrocarbons. And if you want to take it into make a clothing, for example, you have to remove sulfur completely from the feedstock. So how do you remove these sulfur compounds that are tied to the hydrocarbon molecules? And that has been a bigger challenge. And so the entire world suddenly dropped the sulfur regulation down. In 2017, they brought it down to 15 ppm. Now they're going into 5 ppm, 10 ppm, different regions. And so that's one major reason. Sulfur obviously is bad for acid rain and things like that, and there are many other effects that it has. If you look at the globe as a whole, everywhere the regulations are coming down quite a bit. They're going down to 10 ppm. Now marine is the only place we can use 500 ppm. You cannot burn any hydrocarbons in your home, heating oil or anything like that with more than 15 ppm. They're coming down heavily on that too. They're called, so everywhere these regulations are going to be even more. Even in the marine fuels, they want to cut it down to 15 ppm. When that happens, that is like an incredibly challenging problem for transportation. Another problem, sulfur is a problem if you want to produce hydrogen everywhere. That's something that Victor might be able to say even more. So you want to remove the sulfur to like a 15 ppb level or 1 ppb level. Think about it. Trace sulfur is very dangerous to all the catalysis that you do, anything you want to do. So if you want to use that as a feedstock to produce hydrogen or some other chemicals, sulfur has to be removed. So the fuel cell market is growing, and they're looking at, one of the companies looking at us as well. And then there's another, all the, even methane, natural gas to methanol production, you need a removal of sulfur. Just giving you an example that there is a huge amount of interest. So how does our nanowires can provide that solution, right? So the solution is very simple. We came up with these nanowires, and with active metal sites in it. It turns out that when we apply this with a little bit of hydrogen, it actually stays in a zero valent state. And because of the nanowire morphology, it doesn't sinter out, and it can be regeneratable. It can be regenerated as well. And so because of that feature of the zero valency and the high catalytic activity coming from the nanowires, it actually can do deep desulfurization of any hydrocarbon all the way to 1 ppb. We demonstrated less than 1 ppb for natural gas, less than 1 ppm for liquid hydrocarbons. How does the product look like? It doesn't look like Apple products. It's not a sexy product. Victor can testify that. That's the fighting against this tide. But it does look like small extrudates, and these are the things that we make. And that's the product, and it goes into a packed bed, and the process that goes around it is basically know-how, right? Where you apply it, how you apply it, it becomes your process know-how, and that's your technology in a way. So I don't want you to go through all of these, but I just want to say that in all categories, there are ultra-low sulfur gasoline, the one that you pump in the gasoline pump, that has to be less than 15 ppm. But remember, you also want to have high octane, right? These are olefinic feeds and they cannot be saturated, and you have to maintain a high octane number. But right now, all the refineries are suffering. They're losing more than 2 to 3 octanes when they're desulfurizing it. So how do we do that? And so our solution can provide, actually desulfurize it without losing octane. That means an increased revenue, a huge amount of revenue for the refineries. You're talking about tens of thousands of barrels per day type of refineries. These ultra low sulfur diesel. What's the problem? When you go down to the hydrocarbons, as you go down into the diesels and bunker fuels, all the sulfur species that are there becomes extremely refractory, very difficult to remove. No, even the current HDS technology struggles to do it. When they dropped the regulations, now they started doing the blending to come up with this solution for low sulfur diesel. But if they want to really run their current processes to remove the sulfur species, the existing ones in the ultra low sulfur diesel, they need to run it at a very high temperature, high pressures, which means that a reduced lifetime for the existing refineries. And so we can relax their requirements by just adding on another tower and then take it from 50 ppm down to less than 5 ppm. So that can save lifetime, they can save in capex, both opex and things like that. Natural gas is the same problem. Natural gas, the problem, the current technology is that it makes H2S and then absorbs into zinc oxide. What it means is that there's a thermodynamic limitation. People are not aware of it. Thermodynamically, you are limited to 0.2 ppm, 0.1 to 0.2 ppm. And so if you really want a less than 15 ppb solution, you need to go to a different solution, the one that we are presenting. So I'm just going to flash 3. I told you 3 examples. There are many more, but 3 examples. Natural gas, we take the 2-product solution to a 2-stage solution to a 1-product solution. So it goes into the tank, and you don't need to have it. There's no H2S formed in this process, so that means it can go all the way to deep desulfurization, and there is no thermodynamic limitation in our process. And ultra low sulfur gasoline, the current process is actually, I'm sure Clariant knows more, Prime G+, which is uses a typical HDS unit, and they do lose 2 to 3 octane. And we replace the same tower, simplify the process, we can actually implement our solution. So this is actually, at least 10 refineries have shown initial preliminary interest, but pending our pilot trials. Diesel, there is an existing process. We have to add on a small unit as a downstream polishing step. Then we can actually remove that, reduce the severity of the HDS process itself. And so commercial implementation, like I've been telling you, all of these guys are, been there for a while. It's a very, mature market. All the refineries have large investments. They're risk averse. What is the biggest thing you need to do? You need to demonstrate it at a much larger scale than what you can do. And so I'm glad that in our vision, we put a small pilot plant to do the production of the material to ton scale. So by the way, we are the only company that can make nanowire powders at ton scale. So this is I would say, world's first implementation of nanowires into a commercial products. And so to do that, overcome that barrier, we built a small skid unit that can treat about 30 barrels per day, 250 kg pack bed unit, and it's ready to go to a couple of locations, one in refinery, one in offsite from a refinery doing that. This is just for informational for everybody, just to show how these things can be developed further beyond the university. And it needs to be developed like this. And we need to have that space, and this is what Hank actually originally envisioned. There is a cousin, or like some sort of an ecosystem beyond the university boundary that takes the technologies and actually develops them for 5 years and spins them into businesses. And we do want to formalize this approach, and I call this as Rebecca, and another day I can give a talk on that. But I want to show this example. We started with the 10 grams, we scaled it up with a phase 1 grant, then went to phase 2, then productized it, then we went from 4 years, and then you realize that after you make the product, one thing that I want to tell people who are becoming entrepreneurs is that after you make the product, and the customers are going to give you lots of different conditions that you need to test under. And that takes more time than the amount of time that it took us to develop the product. They kept on saying that you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to qualify this. And I'm sure all of the people who are sitting here, Kevin, I'm sure it should be part of your talk, I think, right? So, and then you have to do plant trials. And then you go into the commercial sales. So luckily we had a commercial sale to one large company, 13 tons. That was a great exercise last year. And so we're able to make it, put it in our drums, shipped it out of the facility. So I'm very proud of it, and I'm happy to actually share that news with Hank. He was very happy. So the second part is that, okay, so that was a commercially developing technology. Along the way, we took our nanowire innovations and our process knowledge, and we came up with this, what we call PlasCat process, okay? This is slightly different. It takes off a little bit of different thing. And can you actually do modular production of methanol and ammonia? These two are greatest energy carriers that you can have for hydrogen, clean hydrogen, right? Ammonia takes about 17% by weight hydrogen, and methanol takes about 13% by weight of hydrogen. You can produce it, you can put it into a circular economy if you can actually make it out of a feedstocks that are waste or a biomass or from air itself. So that's what we're doing. These two are primarily for a circular economy. In the long run, we have to live in a circular economy. In 30, 50 years, 100 years from now, we will be, everything is in a circular economy. So CO2 is emitted, CO2 can be hydrogenated to form methanol. Methanol, you can use it, you can release the CO2 again, you can capture it again and do it. Same way, air and water, ammonia, use it, you can use it as a fuel, or you can use it as a hydrogen carrier, or you can use it as a fertilizer. So this is all very important. These two are very important. Right now, you know how many million tons we make, both of them together? More than 300 million tons per year. We make them actually together. Close to 250 to 300 million tons per year, we make them in the world. And there's a large amount of energy cost to that as well. And so what if we can modularize it? That's the only way. The current technologies run with so severe conditions, they have to run continuously. So you cannot hook up renewables to it directly. So if you want to hook up renewables to any of these processes, you have to make them modular. And so the ones that we are developing run on renewables directly, what we call is e-reactors, plasma reactors, and those reactors can run intermittently with intermittent renewables directly. And so that's what we are doing. So the markets, the ones that I'm showing in the green are the real markets that we can approach: solar farms, methanol and fertilizer on demand, clean hydrogen storage, CO2 utilization, biogas to methanol. All of them are applications, okay, and the same technology goes into it. If you want to really do a very large scale plant, this is a methanol institute, put this figure here. You can actually have a very large scale solar farms, produce the hydrogen, you can have a CO2 capture and actually produce the methanol. This is directly from a methanol institute. We did the economics. We actually, at a modular level, we can actually beat the price of the large scale production of methanol. Of course, there is a caveat. What kind of price you pay for the electricity from solar? 24/7, for example. So if you use a 2 to 3 cents per kilowatt hour, you can actually make this very economical. If you do 5 cents, then you have to really get lots of subsidies. So this technology is being developed parallelly within the company. Started in 2019, and several phase 1s and phase 2s and continuation grants are going on. And what we are hoping is that probably in the next couple of years, we'll have a 10 to 100 kg per day unit. And I'm really hoping to put it next to a Brown-Forman site probably next year, at even a small unit. We're working with a few folks there. That is like we can take their CO2 from there, we can take CO2 emissions from the fermenters, we can convert it directly into that thing. The third one, this is just in the beginning stages, capturing CO2 from air, capturing CO2 from other fluid gases. Like I said, we created these nanowire sorbents that can sorb it, we can dissolve it, recycle it. One fun use case scenario, right? You go Navy ships, they go onto the sea, and they usually go on the sea for 2 weeks and they come back to shore. And so one of the things that Navy is looking for is like, can you capture all the CO2 that is produced from their exhaust engines and then bring it back shore? How do you do that? and you do the calculation, between 2 to 4,000 tons of CO2 emitted in 2-week period. And so we can do it with the solid sorbents. You cannot do it with the liquid sorbents because the liquid sloshing with the sea, it's just more dangerous than you would actually offer. So what we are hoping is that we can actually do these nanowires as a sorbents, bring them back, transport it to a place where you can actually make a methanol or something else with it. So we can release it right there and then take it back again. Because the solids, they're dense, so we can even take 2,000 tons of our solid sorbents or 3,000 or so and bring back 2,000 tons of CO2 with it and then take it to a factory and then process it, take it back. So I'm just giving you a scenario. We haven't worked out the business case yet, but that's one of the things. So I'm going to conclude by just saying the Advanced Energy Materials company as a company developed a technology called catalytic adsorbent technology that's very useful for removing sulfur for both the existing industry, hydrocarbons, as well as a growing industry in a biogas or waste to energy, things like markets. Then the second one I presented is a mini GTL technology that basically allows you to take renewables, energy, and the waste feedstocks like CO2, convert it into methanol or ammonia. So thank you so much. Next up, Victor. So I'm not sure if we are doing, we can take, maybe if you have anybody has one question, maybe I can answer it while he's setting it up. Yeah.
Hey everybody, I'm Andrew Marsh, Assistant Director of Conn Center. In follow-up to Mahendra's presentation, we were very quick to focus our attention on the impact that Hank Conn has had here in formation of the center and in driving our mission. And I wanted to back up just a little bit. I realized as Mahendra was talking that let's set some context here. 4 of the speakers that you're going to hear today at the workshop are working with technologies that were developed at the Conn Center and then were licensed to startups that they participate in. So for instance, Mahendra's company, Advanced Energy Materials, had one of the largest patent folios licensed out of the university. This is part of the mission of the center, is to advance these promising technologies from the lab scale, which you all know is very small. And you will not make a successful company out of gram scale anything. Would you all agree with me in saying that? So you have to be thinking in terms of tons and hundreds of tons to be able to have something that is economically viable. That's what the center is really focused on, is bringing those technologies forward to a pre-commercial scale where they can then go into a longer translation and become something that's competitive. Now, those of you who are sitting here who have undertaken those activities, I'm looking at you, Thad and Blake, know the difficulty, nod, of crossing that valley of death. And so that's 4 of the examples that we're going to hear today. The other 2, we're very pleased to have Victor Johnson from Clariant Technologies here with us. Victor is the head of R&D for the Louisville plant and operations. Clariant is an international company, and they've got a pretty significant facility here in Louisville. At the Conn Center, we have been very fortunate to work with Clariant to be able to characterize their materials and work in concert with their operations. So, Victor, I'm going to have you come up and give our next presentation. Big hand.
Good morning, everybody. That's pretty good. So thank you for the introduction and for the chance to be here and speak a little bit.
Close to the mic, Victor.
You know, I hear that at work too. The funny thing is, when I'm at work, I'm the only one that has to use the microphone. Everybody else just seems to be able to speak up. So, Clariant is as has been said, is a major specialty company. We are global in our footprint. Our headquarters are in Switzerland, but we position ourselves on multiple continents. For the organization of the company, there's 3 divisions: care chemicals, absorbents and additives, and catalyst, which is the part of the company that's here in Louisville. You may not have heard too much about Clariant Catalyst, but if you've been in Louisville for a long time, you've probably heard of Sud-Chemie, which was acquired by Clariant in around 2012. If you were here longer before that, you probably heard of United Catalyst. And if you are as old as me, you might have even heard of Girdler, which is the forerunner in this area, almost back 100 years now, which is hard to believe. So we've been well established within this community. It ties back with our stated purpose, which is to build greater chemistry between people and planet. And so being a part of this community, being a part of the Conn Center, and associated with the university is something that we're very proud to participate in. So Catalyst, as I said, is global. We are the largest independent catalyst company in the world. Most of the other catalyst companies that you've heard of are also engineering companies or major producing chemical companies. Our catalyst division is just catalyst. We do engineering work through others, and we partner with people. We have our own catalysts that we develop and sell, and we also commercialize catalysts that other people have developed, including evaluating some for Mahindra and others. We are spread over the entire globe practically. Here in the US, we have 2 R&D centers, the largest one here in Louisville and a smaller one in Palo Alto. An interesting thing about the company, as a specialty company, you'd expect to have a large investment in technology, and we do. We spend about 5 to 6% annually of our sales go back into R&D. Over 10% of the employees in Catalyst are directly in technology roles. So it's a highly advanced, mature business, but at the same time, we are continuing to push the edge of the envelope. We actually have several locations here. We have 2 manufacturing plants. The dot that doesn't have the arrow to it is over at 12th Street, 12th and Oak. That's our largest manufacturing plant. We also have a manufacturing plant down by the airport. That site and the site on Hill Street, which is the center dot there, is where our R&D people are currently located. We operate those 2 centers as though they're one R&D center. So common management, common safety program, which is obviously very important for the kinds of things we do. A lot of common digitization efforts. The 2 sites have some overlap, but they tend to focus on different applications. 2/3 of the people are at Hill Street, 1/3 are at South. At present, we've got about 60 people, plus some co-ops and others, including students from UofL, which have been very, very productive in our labs. So we're appreciating, again, that relationship. What we do is kind of what some of the things that Mahindra just talked about. But it breaks down to us into really 3 core activities that are laboratory-based: catalyst preparation, catalyst characterization, and catalyst testing. And all 3 of those things have to go hand in glove. Characterization in particular is one that we've had a good relationship with the university, making use of some of your capabilities, and thank you. Danielle Covelli, who's sitting in the back, has been on campus several times. We make use of some good collaborations, not just with the UofL, but with other institutes around the country. That kind of characterization is vital to us. It allows us to see not just what the catalyst is made out of, which is obviously important, but what features on that catalyst influence the performance. That's really critical. When somebody comes to us with their own recipe for us to scale up, or our scientists develop something in the laboratory, we have a catalyst that works, but as Mahendra pointed out, that's not good enough. You need to be able to make it on ton scale, and you need to be able to do it in a way that is safe and cost effective, because if people don't buy it, it's not much good. So understanding what those features are, the structure-property relationships, which we couldn't do without that kind of collaboration, is really critical. Once you figure out what the actual active sites are and which features you need and which features you don't, a whole host of things open up. You can get a much more economical synthesis to make the material. Really, really interesting is you can identify the stuff that's in the catalyst that isn't needed and eliminate that source of waste and those additional problems that come for it. So we have actual projects ongoing right now that are aimed at removing what we call substances of very high concern, like chromium-6 and others that are historically used in catalysts but are not things that we really want to be out in the environment. So finding out, is that really critical to the action of the catalyst, or is it just along for the ride? And a lot of times it's just along for the ride. And so you can figure out how to do it. The last thing we do is the testing. Those are, we have about 30 lab reactors that run various applications that simulate what our customers do when they use our catalyst. The biggest challenge we have there, it's fairly straightforward to measure selectivity and conversion, overall activity, major byproducts. But some of these catalysts will last for years. Some of them 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And how do you expect when you're developing a new catalyst, how do you get an idea for how it's going to perform 6 years from now? You can't afford to run it for 6 years. So you have to do aging tests. You take samples back from the customers. You do more characterization to see how it's changed over time. And then you develop testing protocols that will stress the catalyst in an appropriate way so you can see whether it's improving or not. One of the ways we did that, there we go, was aimed at attacking the energy consumption in the product. That's the greater chemistry between people and planet. Mahendra did a nice job laying out different ways to get renewable energy into the chemical processes and how critical that is. This is another way of illustrating that. This is a projection that was done by ECMA a number of years ago, looking at the trajectory the world was on in terms of energy usage, starting from 2010. And if we'd stayed on that trajectory, where would we go as the population expands, as the number of products we produce every year increases? The opportunity for the Conn Center and for companies like Clariant is to drive that trajectory lower. And by coming up with new catalysts and new process technology to make the same things or to make the new things that we'll have to make next year and the year after, but with less energy, is the mission that we're after. And I think it dovetails very nicely with the overall mission of the Conn Center and Hank's vision for this effort. One example that we've recently commercialized is in the area of reforming. Mahendra touched a little bit on this. That is the largest way that hydrogen is produced today, and it will be for a long period of time. And it's, depending on how you describe it, it's gray or black hydrogen. It's coming from hydrocarbons. It produces a lot of CO2. You get the hydrogen. The flow sheet that's there is a simplified version of a way that you can get to hydrogen in order to produce ammonia. You can use the ammonia, of course, for the traditional use, making fertilizers. People are now looking at it as a way of transporting hydrogen across the globe from where you can make it to where you need it, a lot more economically and safely than compressed hydrogen. A key step is what's called a steam methane reformer. This is, there's very different sizes and shapes and things like this, but they basically are a catalyst loaded into tubes that you then heat in an oven where you have great big burners. You drive that steam methane reaction shown on the right-hand side there. The main reaction produces CO and hydrogen. You then do shift chemistry to balance that out. You can do that shift back and forth to decide what product you want to make. If you're going to make methanol, ultimately you'll go to a different target than if you're making hydrogen to make ammonia in this case, or hydrogen for any other use. So you balance all those things out. The nice thing about those shift reactions is they produce a relatively clean CO2 stream that's relatively easy to capture, sequester, use for something else if you want to. That firebox, though, produces CO2 just like it does in your gas stove or the fireplace or any other burner. It's very dilute. It can be pretty nasty with a lot of contaminants on there. It's very, very difficult to deal with. So you can capture the CO2 from the process and move towards blue, but you can never get to green using that kind of a process, because that CO2 is just going to be, even if you do catch it, you're spending so much energy in that process that it becomes a no-win scenario. What we did, working with one of our engineering partners, Technique Energies, is to take a look at that process and the catalyst that's used and change the rules of the game. So we took the catalyst out of the reactor, out of the tubes, made it empty, inserted a pair of tubes down the center of the existing reformer tube, so this can be retrofit into anybody's plant. The black lines you see in the middle there show you the direction of the flow. In a traditional reformer, the flow comes in from the top, runs through the catalyst bed, and exits the bottom. In this technology, when it gets to the bottom, it does a U-turn and goes back up through an annular space, does another U-turn, and then exits. By doing that, you are allowed to capture that excess heat that's in that process gas and use it to heat the catalyst, which drives the endothermic reaction. So you can drive the efficiency of the process up with a lot less fuel gas. When you put that in practice, the flame that you're using, the gas you're using to heat the system up, decreases. The challenge is you've taken out a significant amount of your catalyst. And of course, the catalyst is rather important to the process. So how do? You come up with a brand new way of making that catalyst. In this case, it's a structured catalyst. Looks like folded metal that is then assembled and then wash coated, and the active metals are put on it. That allows us to cram additional catalyst activity into that tube with a lot less pressure drop, and allows this entire process to work. So you can change out the interiors, change out the catalyst, put in these new interior pieces in the tubes, and the plant doesn't have to change. We've actually started that up now twice in 2 different plants. And you can see the kind of benefits that we're realizing. A significant reduction in the amount of gas that's being used, so almost 40%. To produce the same amount of hydrogen coming out of the back end. In addition to that, because you're using less gas, you're producing less CO2 in this part. So you're moving away from black and towards blue as a result of this reduced energy. It's not the final solution, but it is a great transition towards, well, while the rest of the infrastructure catches up. You can kind of see how you go about loading this up. That crane is lifting up one of the catalyst assemblies. You take the top of the tube off, lift this thing up in the air and kind of stab it down into the hole and then button it back up and you run. The picture on the right is what it looks like when you look inside the firebox of one of these reformers. So pretty hot. I've never really, I spent some time working in manufacturing plants. I never really liked looking inside those things. But it's a pretty impressive technology. So finish up here, just acknowledge some of our people who developed this technology and our engineering partners. It also has received a couple of awards last year, one from ICIS and another from hydrocarbon processing. So, thank you.
Any questions for Victor before he steps away?
Thank
Our next speaker is Thad Druffel, who is one of the theme leaders for solar manufacturing, the theme leader for solar manufacturing R&D at Conn Center. Part of his group's innovations have been licensed to a company that he co-founded called Bert Thin Films, named for his cat. It's got to come from somewhere, folks, and it means a lot when it is close to the heart. So I'm happy to introduce that, and
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate it. Yes, it was named after my cat, and for those entrepreneurs who are going to start a company, you have to sign checks at some point, so you have to have a company name. We kind of just came on as my wife started the company with me, and our cat of, I think it was 16 years, died the day we started the company. So we named it after the cat. That is the story. Yes, thank you for closer to the mic. That's going to be the theme today, isn't it? So yeah, my name is Thad Druffel. I am the founder of Bert Thin Films. I'm actually the co-founder. It was founded with a postdoc that was working with me at the time. We're lucky to have her father here with us today. And I'm also a theme leader for solar manufacturing research and development. So what I thought I'd walk you through today is why we're doing this, some of the journey that we've gone through, some of the lessons that I've learned throughout it, and hopefully inspire you to do something similar. So with that, we'll jump in it. And one of the things I do want to mention as well, Dr. Schatzel was telling us that she spent some time, 20 years in manufacturing. I did the same thing, and I swore when I started this company I wasn't going to manufacture. But I'm going to show you how we're getting pretty doggone close to it. So what we're trying to do, I work in solar energy. Most of you think of solar energy, you think of solar panels, right? What so happens that this industry has gotten so big that it's already consuming over 10% of the world's supply of silver. And we're going to grow that industry by 10x. Anybody worried? Yeah, I'd be worried too. Of course, the industry's not stupid. They're doing stuff. They're trying to reduce the amount of silver, and they've done a pretty good job, but they're not going to be able to get rid of it. And so, as I said, we're going to get a 10x increase. They're doing some things to improve it, but there's one, they like that silver for a specific reason. It's dirt cheap to put onto the solar cell. They use a screen printing process. No one wears t-shirts anymore. So if you've got a t-shirt, most of those t-shirts are screen printed. That's the technology that we're using. Now, we're printing these lines thinner than the human hair. So typically, sometimes my eyesight's so bad, I can't even see what we've printed on the cells. So there is some technology there, and of course there's some technology in the materials. But screen printing's really cheap, and you want to use, and silver's got a really good conductivity. And I'm going to explain another reason that we're going to use that the industry uses silver. But I like to knock on silver. I love this slide because it shows you if you're trying to do a manufacturing plant and you've got volatility like that, as a plant manager, that must be the most frustrating thing in the world. When do you buy their futures in silver so you can economically produce what you're supposed to produce? So there's all these highs and lows. I watch this price of silver every single day. In the last week, it has seen over a 10% fluctuation. It's crazy. So the one thing we wanted to do, and we looked at it, and I came around this because I had some manufacturers show me their facility, and they really wanted to get in copper, but they were doing it wrong, and I'll tell you more about that here in a minute. But when I looked at these price differences, that bottom curve, that's copper. It's 1/100th the cost, and it's been that way no matter what happens to silver. So the industry has been desperately trying to figure out how to use copper, but they don't want to change screen printing because screen printing is already part of their process. And so we're going to have this 10x increase in the size of the industry. It's all screen printed. So why not copper, right? So not only do you screen print it, you throw it in this furnace that's over 500 degrees C. What happens to copper when you expose it to 500 degrees C in an oxygen environment? Anybody know? It oxidizes, right? So you lose all the conductivity. So copper has about the same conductivity as silver, but if I try to throw it in a furnace at 500 degrees C, I kill it. So there's one problem we had to overcome that we didn't know we had to overcome, by the way. And the second problem that we have to overcome is copper diffuses through silicon at the temperatures that we're firing at, which is about 500 to 600 degrees Celsius. You should be able to detect copper on the backside of your silicon cell, which is about 150 microns thick, so it's about 3 hairs thick, within the 6 seconds that we have that cell at temperature. So we have to do 2 things. We have to arrest it from oxidizing, and we have to keep it from moving through the silicon. And that's what we figured out how to do. So we offer this industry something that they have not been able to figure out yet. So they can just take our material, it's a paste, and they put it into their process. So it's a screen printable paste, and not only do they do that, they can throw it on their belt furnaces that they already use. So there's no changes to processing, and they don't have to add any new equipment. So no CapEx, no OpEx. They love us, right? We've been able to demonstrate performance. So I get a lot of questions from folks like, well, you know, I assume you're not a metallurgist because, you know, copper goes into silicon. And I say, listen, we fired this thing at 600 degrees C, and it's a functioning cell. That should alone convince you we've stopped the copper from going through the silicon. We've also had to, as Mahendra has pointed out many times, you show somebody something, they say, yeah, but what if this? So then we had to figure out and demonstrate to them that, okay, we'll put it in an oven at 200 degrees C for 1,000 hours. You know, that's 10 weeks of work, and guess what? It's still not going through. And so now the industry says, okay, yeah, great, now try this. So we're somewhat in that loop, and that's, I'll explain to you how that's getting us into becoming a manufacturer. But the upside for the industry, I didn't know you guys couldn't see half my slides. That's great. So the upside for the industry, that's about $20 billion savings for the industry in about a decade, right? Now, here's what's hard for us. The folks that we're selling to, yeah, they're going to make, they're going to have the savings, but the people who make the paste, they're going to lose that $20 billion. So this has become a very interesting business development. Is who gets this technology at the end? So this has been something that I've learned a lot in the last year. Actually had a lot of conversations with Hank on this conversation and on this topic, and learned a lot in the last year. So I'm going to summarize the technology and then go back into some lessons learned. So this is a true dry replacement for silver. Industry loves the idea. I'd love the industry to write that check. Haven't gotten there yet. As I said, we're going to end up having to manufacture this. It uses the existing equipment. We don't have to worry about the global supply. So this is sustainable. We don't worry about the fact that we're going to run out of copper. There's a lot of copper in the world. Obviously, it's a lot less expensive. So we think we can bring this to market and give those manufacturers at least an 80% reduction in their cost. And the newer technologies that are coming out, it's one of the things that we've had to learn is people keep throwing new technologies at us, and we're having to learn that on the fly. And we're doing this with a relatively small team. So I'm going to go back a little bit, talk a little bit about where this came from, and then some of the lessons that we've learned throughout this. So this was an idea that we developed at the university. I was out in California back in the day when they actually made solar panels here in the United States, which they're starting to do again. But went out there and they showed me this cool way that they were going to replace silver with copper. They were going to put it through a photoresist, they were going to do electrodeposition, they were going to do this, blah, blah, blah. There's no way they were going to make any money off that. And that company does not exist anymore for that reason. So I came back, I threw an idea out to Ravina Dharmadasa, who was a postdoc at the time. I said, hey, let's print it using an inkjet printer and we'll fire it using our IPL process. Well, within a year we had an idea, we showed that at work, We had a couple patents. We got some money for it. Did a bunch of publications. Blah blah blah. And then about a year and a half later, I said, "You want to start a company?" And she said, "Sure." So we started Bert Thin Films. And so we started that in 2015, and we went through about 4 years of development where she was basically the whole company. We had some technicians that would work with her, but she was the company. And we get to about 2018 or so, and we just couldn't make nothing was working, because we proposed to the industry that they put in a new process. They said, "No go. We don't want a new process." So I sat down with her, we had a long talk, and we said, "All right, we're going to make this screen printable, and we're going to fire it." And we thought that would be easy, right? Turns out it was a lot harder, but we made that pivot. I sold that idea off to some local angel groups. We raised some more money. So in the so throughout this whole thing, through government grants and through raising money, we've probably raised about $5 to $6 million on this project. To go into the scale that we talk about, when we were at the university, we were doing milligrams. So we'd make milligrams as material, we'd spray it, we'd find out what was going on, and then we repeat. And then we start to realize, once you start the company, milligrams doesn't do you any good anymore. So you start going to a gram cell, and now we can start making solar cells. And then we get into having to make paste. Well, unfortunately, the way you make paste is you can't do it with milligrams. Now you're into gram scale, or tens of gram scale, in order to make the paste. So the very first paste that we were making, I'd go downtown and I'd do this for a half hour, and we'd get a paste. Then we start getting more money, and then we start making kilogram scale using the three roll mill. So now our setup's growing. And then in the last couple of years, we've created the capabilities that we can make our own panels. And so now we're making kilograms of paste. That's our typical supply side. But now, I show this other picture. It's really hard to see, but there's a piece of equipment right here at the bottom. It's about a football field in length. That's where we're headed. That's what we have to do in order to demonstrate to this industry that we have something that they want. So I'm going back to the investment community. I'm asking for more money so we can build that here in Louisville. And one of the things I've found out through this whole process is Louisville will have one of the premier places in the United States for solar cell research, just because of what we're doing at Bert Thin Films. So all this equipment I'm showing you here is not anywhere in the United States centrally located. So everybody has a part of it, but nobody has the whole shebang, and we should have the whole shebang in about a year. Who are we? I threw on there, we're mostly UofL, so folks that we hire have come through University of Louisville. So I actually am an alumni of Louisville. He was my advisor when I got my PhD. Also, Ravini Dharmadasa, she was working with me as a postdoc, so she and I are the co-founders. And then we've hired several folks from the university to work on our R&D team. We threw a bone to EKU, so they've got a little bit in there as well. And then as we've grown, we've also created new partnerships. So I'd like to thank my investors, but we also have a bunch of universities that have some of the capabilities that we don't have, and we've brought them on the team. So we've had UMCC Charlotte on the team for a very long time. We just added Georgia Tech. NREL's been a partner of ours, and so some of the other funding agencies. So we've been funded through the Department of Energy as well through the National Science Foundation. So that's one of the things I have found is I can do everything, but it's really nice when you've got other folks that want to work with you. And so we've really had a really good opportunity to build out our team. Just quickly, just to prove to you that I don't just work at Bert Thin Films, I do work still at the university. We're making progress yet. We still write papers. We're making patents. We're doing startups. You're going to hear from another one of our startups later this afternoon. So we're doing that work that we need to do. We're graduating students. A lot of students I work with here today are a lot of students I work with are here today. So still trying to, and let me also just say we did a pivot. So once we moved copper out of the university, we changed to a new technology. So that's some of the stuff we've been doing here. And then I just want to give a quick personal note. What has Hank meant to me? And hats off to Hank. I mean, Mahendra sold me on the idea. I thought it was a neat idea. Let's create something that will be able to transform the industry, and let's make some manufacturing here in Louisville, Kentucky. But once I met Hank, I really bought into the idea. And a couple of things that really drive home with Hank on me. The first thing that I noticed with him was his loyalty. I mean, I think the thing that really, his wife was always with him. He always talked about his family. His grandkids would come with him. I mean, one day I was at a restaurant with him, and he got in the back seat with his grandkids. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. And that's Hank to me. He's very vested in his family, and he was very vested in the people he worked with, and he treated those people like family, and he treated me like family. And the days that I would get a phone call from Hank, I'd take it immediately, and it made my day. So that's one of the things I learned from Hank. Also, his grit. And he had a steel trap for a mind. So really appreciated Hank starting this, of course Mahendra being a part of it, and this has been a really fun ride. So thank you.
Thank you, Ted. So we've arrived at lunch. Great job, everybody. Eunice is going to open the doors over here on the right side of the room so that we can go through to the next room where they have all of our sandwiches, chips, and drinks and everything. So make your way in there, grab something to eat, and then come back. And in about 20 minutes or so, we're going to have Kevin Nolan come up and give us our lunchtime talk. Thanks, everybody.
Good, good. So I'm meeting with Andy.
Yeah.
Sometime.
Yeah, he and I have been talking pretty regularly about some of the stuff with like Christy and Tech. I've been talking Tech quite a bit too. Just kind of what's the right approach for us.
You know.
We do.
Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. We're coming to the most important part of this program. We're going to have a featured speaker. I think many of you know Kevin Nolan. I've been around him now for the 5 years I've been here. He's on my board too. He's on the Conn Center board. I think he thinks the Speed School board is a little bit more important. That is a joke, Mahindra. But one of the things I like about, first of all, GEA, GE Appliances, I gotta say GE Appliances, is no longer GEA, quit saying that. GE Appliances is a fantastic organization. And this is the truth, all the appliances in my home are GE Appliances. And they have fantastic manufacturing facilities. And we just went to see, I think it was a $400-something million facility to build dishwashers. And so I'm really truly planning on buying a new dishwasher. But, but what I like about, you can see the leadership of Kevin by the people that work under him and the kind of the efficiency of the organization. But if you meet him on the street, you would never know he is the CEO. He is a very humble person, and I greatly admire people who are not pretentious, but they're good. And so I've heard him speak before, very plain spoken, great wisdom, lots of experience, and a great partner to UofL, to Speed School, and to Conn Center. So I don't want to say more because I want to hear what he has to say. Thank you very much.
So thank you for the introduction. So when I got a call, Andrew, he called and said, can you speak? And I said, okay, what do you want me to speak about? He said, just anything. So that's somewhat dangerous, and we'll see. Hopefully this anything will be somewhat relevant to what we're here for. And a lot of it is to think about the leadership and the direction that we got under Hank, because truly an amazing person. Higher, it's good. I'm usually just loud. So, Conn Center. You know, to me, Conn Center, I remember when they were talking about this, I says, this is crazy. We're in Coal State, we're in Kentucky, and we're gonna have an environmental center here at UofL. So I would say initially I was a doubter. And I met Hank, and then I started seeing the vision and where this was. And I use this thing here as a lighthouse. And I think when I thought through things, I thought about Hank, I thought about, his foresight. And you heard some of that today. You heard about his vision, how he could see things far away. And I think that was what it was. I didn't see it. I just saw no way did this make any sense. But Hank saw something in it. He saw something in the university, saw something in the talent here that this could be a way. And you think about a lighthouse, it's something that you can follow, but it also gives direction. And I really think that he shined this thing way out ahead of what anyone's thought. And I think his whole life was like that. And I think those of us that met him, it was special. And I think we've got to always remember this of what is the purpose? What is Conn Center about? It really is about seeing things that are way out there that other people do not see yet. You heard the presentations this morning. You sit there and see these inventions that are here, these innovations, people don't see it yet. You're trying to have them see that light because what they have is important, what you have is important, it is the right direction, but it is so difficult to get that into market. And I think Hank always stressed, don't invent things just to invent them. We have to be a center that's making relevant innovation that's going to get to market. And he was maniacal about get to market, that's all that matters. And that was, I think, the first thing he looked at. If anything we talked about, is there a market? Could it get to market? So to me, these are the lessons that I think I personally, received from Hank, but I think everyone that touched him probably has a similar list. One is, what is the future? I mean, just think where we're sitting here today, everyone talking about climate change, everyone talking about the issues. We're here working on those things, advancing that way ahead of, I think, when others thought it was needed. People didn't see what was coming. Hank saw it. He had that foresight, and he had that throughout his career. The other is this challenge the status quo. He was never satisfied with the way things were. Always thought there could be a better way, there could be something that we could do different. And I think that was what was really special, is he continued to challenge. You heard him talk to Phil, like, don't say can't. He always challenged. Then I talked about this research with the market. I think so many research institutions, that's why they fail, is they sit there researching, they spend money, capital, for what reason? Is there a market? And I think that's something that we have to keep focused on in Conn Center. That was the premise of why it was built, is there's got to be a market. Tenacity. I mean, you look at everything you're doing here, it's hard. And that's why it hasn't been done yet. And there's so many reasons why you can't get this stuff into market. I think, Tad, your presentation was important. You're a disruptor. So that whole industry is going to try to kill you, because the last thing they want to do is sell copper and not silver, because you're going to make a lot more margin, a lot more profit. It's going to take tenacity. And I think that's what Hank, he always had that. And I think we're going to all miss that. The encouragement he could give of keep going, keep fighting, keep moving forward. And the last one is find a community. Because if you look at all the research you're doing, I think the more you branch out, you get a community involved with it. And you saw that in some of the presentations. It's very hard to do anything by yourself. And I think in the future of everything we're doing, that's going to be the most important thing of, do you have a community? Do you have a community of the industry you want to go into so you can work with them? Do you have a community of other like-minded people? That's going to be important for us going forward. And I think Hank really knew the importance of that, and the importance of being connected, having community. And just look at the community built with Conn Center. It's a community of, I would say, it's funny, it's a lot of professors, but the thing I've always seen is friendship. And that's here in the way everyone works. Mahendra, I know, is just friends with everybody. You've got a group here that likes to work together. That's special, and I think that's something that Hank really valued also, because he was like that. He valued, and we heard, treated everyone like family. And that, I think, is a lesson. So all these things, I think, we cannot forget as we keep going forward. We can't forget these things. This is something that's inspired me, and this is from MIT. And I think this is, as I looked at it, I keep thinking for innovation. At G Appliances, I mean, I love innovation, love new things. And I got a lot of lessons from this. But in this, Hank, he knew this inherently. He knew this inherently, and I think that was one of the special things about him. And what this shows you is, here's science. That's what Conn Center is. It's science. But science without interacting around this wheel is fundamentally useless. Science needs engineering, right? It needs design, and it needs art, right? For you to bring something to market, it's got to have all these elements put together to really be relevant, to really take off. And I think too many times we forget that. I know as an engineer, we don't like dealing with scientists because you guys think too much. You have all kinds of complicated charts. Really don't like dealing with artists because they come up with all kinds of crazy ideas. Case in point. Thank you for coming in, Andrew. But that's what actually makes something special. And I think Hank knew this thing, knew it inherently. I don't think he probably ever saw this chart. I don't know if anyone here has seen it, but this is an inspiration. But that's why I think Hank was always an inspiration, because of his knowledge of this and the way he looked at things and the way he saw things and the importance of these different areas. One of the things that we're doing at G Appliances as we were looking at R&D, I ran our R&D for ages, our innovation, and it never worked. We never got it into market. We were doing the things that Hank was always angry about. We were behind closed walls. We were coming up with what we thought was the best ideas in the world. Then we tried to launch them, and either they failed in the market or we could never get across the goal line of bringing to market. So we came up with a way to turn it on its head. And this is actually, most people here probably know it. We could walk there in about 5 minutes. It's on University campus, and it's on campus for a reason. It's here because of the community and what this is about. It's actually almost the opposite corner of the Conn Center. And actually that's somewhat intentional too. So that we have a reason to kind of move around and go around this campus. But this whole place is based upon one fundamental thing. We're not allowed to work on anything until the market tells us to work on it. So we turned innovation on its head. So anything they're working on there has to be driven by a community of people that want the products. The other thing is it's open. Anyone can go there, anyone come on in. We're in there, I'm usually there every Saturday doing something crazy. We're building things, making things. It's open at night, it's open to the community because we want people in there working with us, seeing us. That's not what typically you do in your R&D. It's not secret. It needs to be open because we need to feel and see the market. Passion. Said this thing had to be fueled by passion. Think of what you saw with the presenters so far. The main, I think, similarity of everybody in Conn Center is they're driven by a passion. They're driven by trying to do something better, trying to make a change. Hank, if anything, was passionate. He exuded passion. And I think that's what's important, and that's what we're trying to build into this center. And then work on the intersection. When we opened First Build, we actually opened it with an art show. And we had all kinds of modern art. And I remember there was one person that drags a magnet. You probably know this, Bert. They drag a magnet down the Ohio River and pull junk out, and then they had a pile of junk on the floor. The engineers got really mad of, what is this? Why do we have this? And the thing I think was important to us is those people challenge the way you see things. They see things, the world a different way. And I think that's what's important with the Conn Center too, is you're seeing things a different way. And we got to remember always, keep it open, keep working community, keep focused on that market. So what are our principles? And I think these principles are so similar to the principles that Hank was trying to always drive. Make sure you have collisions, make sure you have community, make sure different people can run into each other. In the university, there's something special here because it's a multidiscipline area. We have to always remember that's a valuable thing. And how do we keep interacting and intersecting with those different disciplines, knowing what everyone's working on? Have transparency. I know we work a lot with Conn Center of we have to keep having people come into the Conn Center to give opinions, to give insight. And one of the things we've always had on the board is a lot of different kind of people in there commenting, seeing it. Hank drove that, and Hank saw the value in that. And I think we have to keep that principle. Make the users direct to participate. All of you that are trying to come out with products, you have to be working with industry. And the quicker you work with them, the better the direction you're going to get from them is going to be. So we have to keep doing that. Use Agile for hardware is a principle we have, but what is that about? That's about going fast, not doing things in this sequential manner that we typically do. Hank was always yelling about, why does it take so long? Why does it take so long? And just pushing, and he was really doing that to drive and push us out of a comfort zone, out of our normal way of we need to get these things in the market quicker. I heard 20 years from 20 years, I don't have 20 years left, so we can't have things that go this slow, right? We've got to move. And I think Hank always had that sense of urgency. And I think the other thing is simple metrics. In the end, what does your customers care about? What are the fundamental metrics that they're looking at? Because a lot of times if it gets too complex, it doesn't work. And I think I always saw that with Hank, his ability to boil things down to very, very simple terms. And there's a lot of complexity on being simple. And he was a man that really understood that and embraced simplicity and always asked the question. There was always a very thoughtful, very simple question, but probing. And it always hit kind of the heart of the matter. So in simplicity, there's a lot of thought necessary, and I think Hank always had that, and had a real art in how he did that and how he probed into that. So, you know, what is this really about? I really think we need to think of Conn Center as one of these innovation ecosystems. You know, that's what differentiates this place from all the other research centers that I've seen, is that focus on, you know, how do you intersect all these? University research, working with companies, working with the market, and working with community. You know, we have to remember, because I think it'll be easy without Hank's direction, Hank's leadership, of us to slip back into just being a research institution. And I think everyone that Hank touched is going to fight that. We're going to keep trying to go in the direction, inspiration that he gave us all. But just like I see at G Appliances, there's so many people that want to go back and innovate the way we used to. Even though we know it doesn't work, people are comfortable. And that's what's normal practice. That's the way people do things. And it's so easy to slip back. And what I found is if you don't have a catalyst, if you don't have someone pushing and keeping us from slipping back to the status quo, it'll happen. So my main fear for Conn Center is we slip out of the direction. We forget the catalyst that we had. And that we become just this research institution. Because that is not what Hank wanted. That's not his vision of the Conn Center. That's not the direction he set this thing on. We all need to remember that. And no matter how much time goes by, I think that's the fundamental thing, is it needs to be different because it needs to be having these elements and have that kind of true market focus, and also trying to make a big difference. Because he didn't want to do incremental things. He wanted to do radical things that would change. And I think that's an important lesson that everyone that knew Hank, I think, clearly learned those. And let's just all remember them and be thankful for the lessons we got taught. So with that, thank you guys.
Thanks so much, Kevin, for joining us and giving that inspiration. Our next speaker is Jagannath Satyavolu from BioProducts, another in the legacy of, is this for you? Of Conn Center's innovations that have sprung into the marketplace. Jagannath's going to talk with us about BioProducts and their efforts to scale up in the biofuels area. Jagannath.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon. BioProducts, we create we use sustainable biomass coming from agricultural resources, and then convert that into value-added products. We see trees everywhere, we see crops growing for food, and these are all naturally carbon sinks. They take carbon dioxide and store carbon and let out oxygen. But when their life ends, the same trees and the biomass coming from the trees and the crops and all that, they decay. They are organic biomass. They decay, and then they let out greenhouse gases. So, as much as we like our trees and crops and everything else in nature, we need to make sure that we have the proper processing processing techniques to handle the biomass so that we reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. And That's what BioProducts does. We take the biomass coming from agricultural resources after their life has ended, and then how do we check? And then we convert them into value-added resources so that they don't continue to emit greenhouse gases. What we are established in 2018, and we have actually a 24,000 square foot facility in Butchertown area of Louisville, and we handle steelers from distilleries, and as well as we have some biomass processing facilities. We licensed 3 technologies developed here at Conn Center, and then we're marketing those technologies for various end users. And the patents provide the bioproducts with turn the agri-farm residue into of sustainable products and of economic value. We recently won for the distillery industry, which is so important to Kentucky. We won the bourbon pitch contest that was conducted by Kentucky Economic Development, and this is the culmination of the technologies, integration of the technologies we developed here at University of Louisville, and that's what we are practicing at the facility in the Butcherstown area. And we're also selected as the 2022 startup by Louisville Business First. So what we do is our motivation is coming from every time we grow corn or rice, after the harvesting is done, the biomass is there in abundant quantities on the fields. You can leave them on the fields, but they continue to emit carbon dioxide. And that biomass is not of value to the farmer. Farmer is getting one revenue from the grain, but we have the potential to create second revenue source for the farmers through the biomass. That's what we do with our technologies. And if we leave them out, about 13% of the agricultural greenhouse gas emissions that biomass results in that kind of greenhouse gas emissions. Now we hear much about the forest fires in California, Canada, and that's the biomass left on the forest floors after harvesting. And we can utilize them properly in appropriate fashion and with some good economics behind it, and so that we can minimize the forest fires. And we can also have very few methods to deal with agriculture and forest residues. Otherwise, they go to landfills, and we need to have the current applications that are low-value applications. So this is the motivation for us. The further motivation, as I mentioned to you, is create second revenue source to the farmers. Farmers, you know, that family farms, small farms, even outside the United States, farmers are not getting enough revenue. There is no good payback on farming, and farmers are basically, if they don't produce food, obviously imagine that situation. So we're working with farmers to create second revenue source for the farmers. We also have so much of food processing in just the distillery industry here. We have major companies like Brown-Forman, Heaven Hill, and Angel's Envy, and some of these big distilleries are here. And they generate waste from their processing. Food processing, there is a big soybean plant coming here, tofu plant coming to Louisville. They have a lot of waste coming in. How do we sustainably handle that source so that won't become a challenge? And then the current solutions, as I mentioned to you, to deal with the waste don't have enough ROI. So what they do is they give it to the farmers, and farmers, they feed it to the cattle, remaining they spread it on the fields. And so essentially, we're not having proper solutions. That means we're leaving much money on the table. So what we do is we take the agricultural biomass through a series of hydrolysis, fractionation, and conversion. These are chemical engineering separation principles. We basically convert them separate them, isolate some components from the biomass into valuable products. And we also have with the wastewater we have for the treatment, we also do the anaerobic digestion. So together, we make agricultural biomass-based products, energy, fuels, and chemicals. The chemicals that are enabling the technologies that we have from the University of Louisville that we licensed, these technologies enable us to make some products like xylose sugar. About xylose sugar is it doesn't metabolize in the body. It's a diabetic-friendly sugar. It's very healthy sugar for the nutraceutical. Again, doesn't metabolize means 0 calorie. Commercially available as a xylitol, which is a modified sugar, but really xylose is a low-calorie sugar that can bring more revenue to the farmers, but at the same time bring more nutrition to the food sources. My colleague left some cookies and bourbon balls on your tables. Hope you enjoyed it. These are zero calorie cookies and cakes, and we can also put them in protein bars and protein drinks. And our objective is we're also putting them in donuts. Now my colleague is working with a donut company to put the sugar coatings with xylose. And imagine 0 calorie donuts that I'll have a bunch of them on my desk. So xylose sugar is one of the main key enabling technologies we have. Our technology is we make the sugar, which is a dry powder, under ambient conditions. Energy consumption, we don't use any evaporation at all. Essentially this product is taken out from the hydrolysate, water-containing solution, as a dry powder using our technology that we developed here. We have 2 patents on this that we licensed. As a result of that, the remaining biomass, we make something called activated carbon, very high surface area activated carbon going into energy applications. And we have 2 battery plants coming here, supercapacitors with the, Tad talked about solar applications, and you need to store the energy coming from the solar. So the energy storage applications wise, the activated carbon that we have, activated carbon market is a huge market, several $1 billion, but you have a very high-end market application for the activated carbon. Bio-coal, this is something Hank was very passionate about. And for the coal industry here in Kentucky, to bring the environmental societal governance ESG, bio-coal is a solution. We make the material from the biomass. It has you can use the existing assets of the coal power plants, replace them with the bio-coal. We have done commercial trials as well, and this is a drop-in replacement for coal in the power applications. That's one of the product lines that we market from BioProducts. We also have for sustainable manufacturing, for composite applications, we have something called a 3D printing filaments that we make by supplementing some of the polymer with the fiber. And our technologies basically make a good match between the polymer and the fiber, such a way that you make a very strong natural fiber filaments. We also make some of the other sources. We also make high protein animal feed that coming from the stillage operations. And biogas is something, the uniqueness of our technology, of what we do here, that we developed here at the university, is biogas normally takes about 30 days to completely digest some of these sources. We cut down the reaction time to about 10 hours. So imagine the kind of footprint, cost reduction we can do, and more importantly, the kind of carbon intensity reduction we are doing. All these product lines are so-called intermediate products. From these product lines, you can make more products. These are the starting materials, for example. Xylose sugar is starting material for going into food applications as well as sustainable aviation fuel. Activated carbon, as I mentioned to you, you have multiple applications from water treatment all the way to energy storage. Bio-coal can go into thermal applications, metallurgical applications. You know that coal has multiple markets. And 3D printing filaments, my colleagues from mechanical engineering, they can talk more about it. We have 3D printing is taking off, and such an important aspect that our work is picked up by NASDAQ Trade Journal, that the University of Louisville researchers are working on using soy hulls to make 3D printing filaments. So, animal feed, obviously, we have so much of feed business. We have a cattle feed business here, dairy business here also. But in terms of locally available stillage going into feed applications, we have done feed without using any heat. That means sustainability point of view, we are increasing sustainability for the distilleries, and biogas, obviously pure biogas we're making. We obviously, from our marketing point of view, our folks, our colleagues, basically branded our products. Sucrose is what we call our xylose sugar, and the bourbon balls and all that, they contain a good level of sucrose in it. And biocoal is now, when we call it hemi-fuel, it is sustainable solid fuel that can go into multiple opportunities. We are working with multiple industries on that, and we are working with a petroleum company to convert xylose into sustainable aviation fuels. So these are some of the brandings we have: hemi-source, sucrose, and hemi-fuel, that we are currently working with multiple customers. So what we leveraging the technologies from Conn Center, University of Louisville. What we are doing is BioProducts is basically advancing a sustainable and economic process option in collaboration with multiple industries. The current projects going on, our pipeline of projects is, we're working with farmers essentially to increase their revenue, working with their stover, working with their soy stubble, working with some of the wheat straw that they have, and how do we valorize the biomass. Decarbonization of farming. If you have any exposure to any farming, a lot of energy goes into harvesting the field. So imagine you turn those harvesting machines into electrical machines. You generate power on site. So some of the decarbonization options we're working with the farmers, and some of our technologies will lead to that. As I mentioned to you, the products that we are talking about are only the intermediate products. They lead to some of these high value opportunities for the community. We're working with coal miners to bring the ESG for their coal customers. They supply, still coal goes into coal goes into metal applications, chemical applications, but they're blending the coal with the bio-coal so that they can bring the ESG. We're working with some of those farmers, coal miners as well. Distilleries. Distilleries, we have so much of distillery industry. The gentleman from Brown-Forman is going to talk next to me after this. So he can talk about the carbon footprint associated with the stillage operations. Our solution that we developed, integrated solution that we developed here, lowers the carbon footprint. And sustainable bourbon production is something for some of the distillers that we are working with are looking for. So stillage handling, also the biogas going in, they can replace the natural gas with the biogas we are producing, so that we can reduce the carbon footprint as well. We also work with sugarcane processors in Louisiana, Florida, where they have millions of tons of the sugarcane bagasse left sitting there decaying, emitting the greenhouse gases, and we process that into valuable opportunities. Rice millers, so much of in Arkansas, Mississippi, Louisiana area, Texas area have so much of rice that rice millers are having a problem with their rice hulls. Soybean crushers, same thing with soybean processing. We work with Evansboro Grain here in Kentucky, and all the corn milling industry, making fuel ethanol, making all these corn syrups and all that stuff. So we are working with we're utilizing our technologies, our solutions, working with multiple process industries to bring sustainable economic process options. Thank you, and I want to also thank, I moved from a manufacturing industry. I spent 20 years in the industry before I came to the academia, and it was moving from industry to academia is not easy. Obviously, Mahendra, he has good vision for this, and more, but more and more I learned from the vision of Conn and the The speakers before me also summarized nicely his vision. Thad talked to him about the mentorship that he got from Hank. Hank has been always there. If you have a question, you can always kind of bounce it off of him. He has so much of knowledge in manufacturing side, and every time he sees something about BioProducts or work we are doing, I get a call from him very nicely. He kind of congratulates, talks more about it. He wants to know more about it, and his passion and his tenacity is something that we really need, and that's what he kind of provided. And really thank him for that. We miss him, but our way of thanking him is to make sure that some of these technologies developed at Conn Center go to the next level. Thank you.
So the original technology is actually that licensed to BioProducts, actually sponsored by a very generous gift from Brown-Forman, Chris, and his predecessor. Actually, I mean, he's still there. They gave more than, I think, $700,000 over a period of 3-4 years as a gift to do this development. So I want to thank Brown-Forman for that. So with that, I want to invite Chris Steele to represent Brown-Forman.
I didn't write that check. So thank you. So again, Chris Thiele, I'm with Brown-Forman. I lead what we call technical services. So that's R&D, innovation, corporate engineering. So that's like buildings, distilleries, warehouses, all that good stuff. So that's kind of what I do in my relationship. I think I've been on the board with the Conn Center for I don't know how many years, but quite a few. So I'm going to talk about one of the specific examples that we partner with the Conn Center on, but I think more importantly, I wanted to talk about just the value that at least Brown-Forman and multiple corporations have with interacting with the Conn Center. We need visionaries, and Hank was a visionary. And I think Kevin did a really nice job earlier talking about it, and I think also Phil covered it too. Being in kind of corporate R&D, sometimes we have very different goals and objectives for our work, and it sometimes is really hard to be looking out to 10, 15 years, 20 years down the road of what we should be doing research on. So I was always really encouraged when I came to our board meetings at the Conn Center of the really impressive work that you all in this room have been doing that is really working on the 10, 15, 20 years down the road, things that we need as an industry, as a country, as a world to be working on. So it's always been really impressive to listen to all the good work you all are doing. So I thank you for that. Companies like Brown-Forman, especially when we talk about the examples I'm going to cover and some of the stuff Mahendra said and Jagannath said too, of you all are working on stuff that's not our core competency, things that are super important to our business. However, we just don't have the expertise, the resources to be really good at that stuff. So it's really important with these relationships between universities and centers and corporations to kind of keep that stuff moving, because it's not always the highest priority for companies like Brown-Forman. So again, we've been together since about 2011. While I'm going to give one specific topic, we never hesitate to go talk to Mahendra about like, hey, we've got some interesting issues in our industry. What do you all think? Is it something you have any expertise on? Is it some of the things you guys might be able to help us work on? So again, that partnership is really important to us. And sometimes it's just a a phone call and a question, or coming over to talk to some of our folks in Brown-Forman about, hey, this is something that's coming up, what do you all think? So we don't hesitate to reach out and ask those questions, which is really valuable to us. Again, technical consulting, investigations, questions, answering. And again, I think, and Kevin said this, so I'm going to reinforce it, that whole piece of like commercialization is, that this center is really focused on, is really important to us. We interact with a whole bunch of R&D centers all over the world that do really cool stuff. Most of them have a really hard time with scale up, financial analysis. How do we make this an actual business plan that makes sense for companies? Because that's the language we use. Any ideas that my team comes up with, we have to have business plans and business cases to kind of, how does it fit in priorities? How do we scale it up? Does it make sense for us as a company? What's the margin? All that good stuff on it. So that, even having that mindset, and Thad mentioned this a little bit in his presentation too, that's really, really valuable. To be able to speak that language to companies is really impactful and useful in terms of kind of selling these ideas. So there's been a variety of topics, and I mentioned this too. So sustainability obviously continues to be more and more important. So the things you all are working on are the tip of the spear that most of our companies are super interested in, and it's just an endless increasing of importance for our businesses. Efficiencies, production efficiencies are always important. Margin, making things better, faster, higher quality. We spend a lot of time and energy on it. And then the specific topic we'll touch on today at a high level is kind of byproducts. So surprisingly, when you make whiskey and ethanol, a lot of times you're hampered by what you do with your byproducts. So if I talk a little bit about that specific example, and Jagannath mentioned some of the work that we've been doing together, but so when you think about making alcohol, it's generally the raw material is made from grains. Long chain carbohydrates, we convert them to short chain sugars. Short chain sugars are what the yeast can convert to alcohol and CO2. But when you're done with that grain, you got to get rid of it. And your capacity of getting rid of that grain is how much alcohol you can actually make. So, for instance, we just expanded one of our distilleries down in Shively this past year. It's totally based on how much of the grain we can get rid of in this area. And we work really closely with MSD around like discharge. We work really closely with farmers. We work really closely with a variety of companies that do things like biodigesters, and we work really closely with the Conn Center on, are there ways to do better things with this byproduct? Brown-Forman and whiskey distillers aren't used to being hampered by the things we're trying to just get rid of. We want to spend a lot more time on selling bourbon, selling whiskey, selling tequila, all that good stuff. So it's a real kind of behind the curtain of, this is really a really important thing for our industry, especially in Kentucky. It's a really big, booming industry, and having like long-term solutions for this area and then for Kentucky in general is really, really important for our state. So typically, it's land applied. Farmers love it. Cattle love it. It's a great. That's mostly what folks use it for or apply. Generally speaking, farming is a little bit of it's a little fuzzy of the future of farming and who's doing it and who's not doing it. Most of spent grains or waste grains have a lot of water in it. So when you think about like the economics of this, you don't want to be shipping this stuff all over the state of Kentucky. In fact, you generally want to ship it within 5 to 10 miles. The further you get, the worse the economics of this stuff is. And then generally speaking, farmers will take it, which is great, but they won't pay for it. which is fine. For us, like I said earlier, we just want a reliable way to get rid of this stuff so we can keep making whiskey. We talked about the geographically close stuff. So when you think about shipping water all over the place, terrible idea. What's the way to not ship water all over the place? Look at evaporation, drying, filtration. All of that stuff is really, really energy intensive, really expensive to do. So now you're putting a lot of energy and money into things that you're essentially having to give away anyways. So the economics around this stuff really is not great. So that's why working with like the Conn Center and some of these ideas, anything we can do to upscale or upvalue the stream is really, really important to the industry. Things like biodigesters, which are generally globally what most people do if you can do them. Converting that stuff into either anaerobically or aerobically into natural gas, which you recover and sell. Most places around the world, especially in like Europe, that's what most people do. The problem with that is, especially in the metro area, biodigesters are really, really frowned on, and quite frankly, politically, probably impossible. So that's been taken off the plate for us and most of the distillers in the metro area. So then it just adds to the additional importance of kind of figuring out other ways to handle this waste. And again, as I mentioned, kind of the ultimate goal is both sustainability-wise and as well as just value, figuring out ways, like Jagannath mentioned, how do we make it into xylose or make it into something that actually has value that we can use and have a reliable source for this product. So again, just super important to the industry, and this is to the global industry. So I think I'm really encouraged because I think at the Conn Center you're all working on kind of the right stuff, at least specifically for our industry. Just results, patents, publications. This is very important to the Conn Center. Training multiple graduates and undergrad co-ops, leveraging the technology for additional patents, the collaboration, as Jagannath mentioned, the Kentucky Bourbon Pitch win. And I will say, most importantly, this is a journey, right? And Brown-Forman understands this when I talked about the 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, we understand that time frame. And while it's hard for companies like Brown-Forman to apply resources against it, we love these collaborations of folks who are looking that far ahead that we can help support and keep moving forward. So again, I think Hank Conn's vision was right on the money. I've been really, really impressed with all the work you all have been doing over the years and the expertise in this room. I think the focus on the commercialization side and the financial analysis of the stuff is exactly what we need to kind of keep this stuff moving and executing it and scaling it up. So, thanks.
So much, Chris. So we have last but not the least.
Last but most.
Anyway, so we have our own newly minted entrepreneur, I guess, but he came with a lawyer from the company. You came with a lawyer, so.
Yes, I always bring my legal counsel with me. Also my wife. Thank you. Okay, so microphone coming through okay? I know that's a common theme today. Closer to the mic? All right. So I was told that Hank Conn always hated slides. So I figured part of the way that I would honor him today is to not present any slides. What's that? Finger puppets, right? Yeah, I use my hands. And so I'm Blake Martin. I'm the CEO, co-founder of SoFab Inc. And kind of to begin, I think I'd start with a question. And this may not be an audience that's necessarily representative of the general population, but how many people in the room, just raise a hand, have heard of the term perovskite? Yeah, fair number. Well, I figured, to get everybody involved, let's everybody together just say the word one time. So we could all just say, so perovskite on 3, 1, 2, 3. All right, I've created exposure. Look at that. Got everybody in the room to say perovskite. Okay, so that's the space that my company operates in. So our company is SoFab Inc. We are the premier material supplier for the perovskite industry, an emerging industry. And so perovskites are a new type of solar technology. Now the solar technology is currently estimated at about $200 billion worldwide. Perovskites underneath that solar umbrella are expected to experience about an 85% compound annual growth rate over the next 5 years. So it's an emerging market, not quite as established as some of the other industries that we've heard today, both in silicon and also in some of the catalysis work that's been done. But it's an emerging market, and that kind of creates a unique set of challenges that we are actively working to navigate. And so what our product offering is, our flagship product line, it's a tin oxide nanoparticle material. It makes these solar panels more efficient. It makes them more stable. You can manufacture them at higher throughputs, and then simultaneously we really undercut the cost. Now, detailing that, you're like, okay, why haven't you sold this stuff yet? Well, as we've mentioned, there are a lot of barriers to getting a product integrated into a new material processing line. In the case of SoFab, where this industry is emerging, those barriers present themselves in terms of our customers don't know what their final product's going to look like. What does that mean for a material supplier? We don't know what they want from our material, and we don't know exactly how to pitch it, sell it, and deliver it to them. The way that we approach this and overcome this barrier is we actually form relationships with these material manufacturers rather than having that sort of transactional sort of relationship that you might see from a general material supplier. So what we've been able to do to date is we're currently negotiating a few deals, joint development agreements with cost-sharing structures of a few $1 million. And we've all been able to do this with just our initial capital injection from the DOE with our perovskite startup prize that we got last year. So to date, we've raised about $250,000. We're currently in negotiations on a few $1 million projects. And then we actually just resubmitted a proposal for the second phase of our prize for another $600,000. So here within the next month or so, we should really have a lot more clarity as to what the trajectory is for our technology, whether that be more of a seed series raise or doing more of a Series A sort of raise of capital. Now, that's kind of where our company stands. That's our company structure and our business model. My personal experience with the Conn Center. So I joined back in 2017. So I'm relatively green into the industry. I've heard a few different people mention that they've had, say, 20 years of experience in manufacturing. I had about 20 years of experience just on Earth, right? So certainly within the last year, we've done a lot to learn. We conducted a wide variety of interviews with this industry. I've talked to a lot of people that I never thought I would have had access to. And I mean, just even looking at myself a year ago and who we are today, it's changed a lot. And certainly we've got a lot of work to do, but I think our tenacity is a fun buzzword we've used today. Our tenacity is going to get us to what is ultimately going to be sustainable and sustainability for our business. And so with the Conn Center, joined in 2017, I did my PhD here. I got introduced to my other two co-founders who are in the room. I see Peter over there can wave, and Cecile's in the back. We came together, we worked on a Solar Energy Technology Office's funded prize to develop metal oxide materials for perovskite solar cells. We developed some IP under the guidance of Dr. Juffel and Dr. Grapperhaus, both in the room, and some of our collaborative colleagues at the National Renewable Energy Lab. We developed that IP, which is the core IP for our business. We're licensing it from the university, and that's what we're kind of foundationally launching the company off of. I didn't really know when I came to UofL that I was going to be involved with the Conn Center. I think in my undergraduate research at Center College, I developed a passion for renewables, but I had no idea as to how to actually execute on what was at the time just an idea of working in renewables. Coming to the Conn Center, it really gave us a lot of guidance, a lot of infrastructure, and a lot of really just talented individuals, both from the former professors and even just Hank Conn himself, that gave us the direction that then we were able to execute on. And while at the moment we probably lacked a vision, we had a passion, and I think that that passion has then since turned into a vision. I personally only had a few interactions with Hank Conn. I do remember in particular, I think I gave a pitch competition that was put on by the Conn Center pretty early on. In the crowd, it's really funny, at that point in time, I'd been in the Conn Center for a year or so, but I didn't know Hank Conn. Like I didn't know what he looked like, I just knew the name. And so I remember in the crowd, there was one individual that was like really intense and really paying attention to the words that I was saying, and even afterwards followed up and was like, you know, this is really cool what you're talking about, I really appreciate you talking. Found out later that was Hank. So I think from somebody who didn't really know him, even in the brief interactions, a lot of his passion and energy and effort really came across. And so that's our company, that's our vision, that's kind of my story to get to where I am now. And we're going to continue on and keep the principles that Hank put forth for our company and for the Conn Center in mind as we are on this journey. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, that pretty much wraps up our workshop, and I hope you enjoyed it. And we're going to continue this either annually or semi-annually. We're going to continue to make progress in this type of a direction. Thank you all.
So I wanted to reiterate that everyone is invited to the celebration of life this evening for Hank, which will be held from 5 to 8 p.m. at the Angels Envy Club over in the stadium. Enter the stadium through gate 6, please. Program begins at 6 o'clock and it'll be brief, but open bar and some lovely food and all of you. So we hope to see you there. And my parting note is, if you have not yet had an opportunity to sign the barrelhead, Eunice, if you don't mind bringing that out to show everyone. Well, maybe she didn't hear, or maybe she did. To commemorate this workshop, we had this barrelhead collectible made for Phil in honor of his father. And so we hope that everyone got an opportunity to sign it, and it'll be available to do so.
So we want to take a picture. Take a picture. Thank you. Take a picture. Yeah, okay.
That's awesome.
Look like a bunny. There we go. That's cool. Great. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Awesome.
This commemorates this workshop as well. And thanks, honor. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you for all that you do, Phil. If you didn't get a chance to sign, we'll have it on the table as you go out. To the members of the Technical Advisory Board, we will be moving to the boardroom, and we'll begin that meeting as soon as y'all are over there. So everyone have a great rest of your day. Hopefully we'll see you tonight at 5 o'clock. Take care, everybody.